Kindly penned. An Alphabet Sweethearts Romance. Written by Susanne Ash. Please like and subscribe. Chapter 1. Clara. The rain patters against my classroom windows as I finish grading the last essay. I pause at a senior's thoughtful analysis of second chances in Pride and Prejudice, finding myself lost in thought until Lily Matthews appears in the doorway. Ms. Langford? I wanted to return this before I forgot. She places my weathered copy of Jane Eyre on my desk. It was amazing, just like you said. I smile, running my fingers over the familiar cover. I'm glad you enjoyed it. The way she finds her way back to him after everything, Lily says, eyes bright. It's like the universe knew they belonged together. The universe, or Charlotte Bronte, I tease gently. Same thing, she grins before disappearing down the hallway. By the time I reach my car, the rain has picked up, drumming against the metal roof as I drive home. My little house appears through the curtain of rain, robin's egg blue with white trim and a wraparound porch. Thomas and I bought it 15 years ago, drawn to its charm and the oak tree perfect for the free library we installed beneath its branches. I make a dash through the rain, my tote bag held over my head. On the porch, I notice movement in my peripheral vision. The little free library's glass door is swinging gently in the wind. Odd. I'm certain I latched it properly this morning. With a sigh, I set down my bag and venture back into the rain. The little library, a miniature replica of our house that Thomas built the summer before he died, stands at the edge of my yard. I reach for the brass latch, but pause. The books inside have been rearranged. I always organize them by color, but now there's a newcomer disrupting the pattern. A navy blue volume with a well-worn spine. I open the glass door and extract the unfamiliar book. Persuasion by Jane Austen. Not my copy. Mine is a hardcover that sits on my bedside table. This one is clearly beloved by someone else, soft with age, corners gently rounded. When I open it, a small slip of paper flutters out, landing on the wet stones at my feet. The handwriting is neat but distinctly masculine, the ink slightly smudged from the damp. Some stories don't begin until the second chapter. I read it twice, feeling something flutter in my chest. The sensation is so foreign it takes me a moment to recognize it as anticipation. Who is M? Inside, I change into dry clothes and settle into my reading chair with a cup of tea. I examine the book more closely. Someone has underlined passages throughout. One catches my eye on page 187. You pierce my soul. I am half agony, half hope. The words send an unexpected shiver down my spine. It's been a long time since I've felt anything close to that kind of intensity. Since Thomas, I've kept my life deliberately calm. Predictable lesson plans, quiet evenings with books. Safe. But now, staring at the note, I feel something shifting, like ice breaking on a frozen pond. A second chapter. The idea is both terrifying and strangely compelling. I grab my favorite notebook, a leather-bound one I bought on a whim 3 years ago. Should I write back? This is silly, I mutter. It's probably just someone being kind. But I find myself penning a response anyway. The best chapters often come after difficult ones. Thank you for the reminder. See. I fold the note and tuck it into Persuasion around page 158, where Anne and Captain Wentworth finally have their moment. Then, before I can second-guess myself, I wrap my cardigan around me and dash back to the little free library. I place the book back exactly where I found it, feeling strangely lighter. As if I've stepped into a story I didn't realize was being written. But that's not how real love works, Jason argues, leaning forward across his desk. People don't look at each other across a room and know. Speak for yourself, Bethany counters, tossing her dark curls over her shoulder. My parents knew on their first date. That's statistically improbable, Aiden chimes in without looking up from his notebook. The average person dates 7 people before marriage. I hide my smile behind my copy of Romeo and Juliet. My senior literature class's discussion of star-crossed lovers has, predictably, turned personal. Every year, the same debate unfolds. The romantics versus the pragmatists, with the statisticians throwing in their data for good measure. Ms. Langford, Bethany turns to me, eyes bright with the righteousness of youth. You're our tiebreaker. Do you believe in love at first sight? Or is Jason right? That it takes time? The classroom falls silent, 20 pairs of eyes suddenly fixed on me. I carefully place my bookmark between the pages, buying a few seconds to compose my thoughts. Literature gives us both examples, doesn't it? Romeo and Juliet fell instantly, while Elizabeth and Darcy took time to see each other clearly. I adjust my glasses, hoping this academic answer will satisfy them. But what about you? Lily presses, leaning forward with genuine curiosity. Have you ever been in love? The question hangs in the air. For a moment, I'm transported back to Thomas laughing in the kitchen, flour dusting his dark hair as he attempted to bake me a birthday cake. Thomas reading aloud by lamplight, his voice turning even tax documents into poetry. Thomas slipping a note into my coat pocket before a difficult day, words that I still keep in my bedside drawer. Yes, I say softly. I have. What was it like? Bethany asks, her voice hushed with anticipation. The bell saves me, ringing sharply through the classroom. We'll pick up with Act 2 tomorrow, I call over the sudden shuffle of books and backpacks. Don't forget your comparative essays are due Friday. As they file out, Lily lingers, adjusting the strap of her messenger bag. Sorry if we were too personal, Ms. Langford. Not at all, I assure her. Literature is meant to make us reflect on our own experiences. She nods, but her perceptive eyes study me a moment longer. You know, and in Persuasion got a second chance at love. Jane Austen gave her a happy ending after all that waiting. My pulse quickens. You've read Persuasion? Not yet, but it's on my list. You mentioned it in class last semester. She shrugs, already halfway out the door. See you tomorrow. I sit at my desk long after she's gone, her casual reference to Persuasion echoing in my mind. Coincidence, of course. But the kind that makes you wonder, just for a moment, if the universe might be arranging things when you're not looking. When I pull into the driveway that evening and cut the engine, I don't immediately get out. Instead, my eyes drift to the little free library, its blue paint catching the golden hour light. Don't be ridiculous, I mutter to myself, even as I grab my bag and make a beeline for the wooden box. My heart sinks when I open the glass door. The copy of Persuasion sits exactly where I left it yesterday, my note presumably still tucked inside, unread. I don't know what I expected. That my mysterious correspondent would check the library daily? That they'd be waiting eagerly for my response? It was probably a one-time thing, I tell myself, closing the door with a soft click. Inside my house, I go through my evening routine on autopilot. Heating leftover soup, grading a few papers, and calling my sister for our weekly chat. But my thoughts keep drifting back to the note, to the masculine handwriting and the simple signature, M. After my call, I curl up in my favorite reading chair, a novel open in my lap. But the words blur together as my mind wanders. Who drops off a book with a quote about second chapters? What were they hoping for? What am I hoping for? The question catches me off guard. I close my book with a snap and head to the kitchen to make tea, as if the familiar ritual can settle my thoughts. As the kettle whistles, I find myself at the window, staring out at the little library. The porch light I installed beside it casts a warm circle in the growing darkness. This is silly, I say aloud to my empty kitchen. But 10 minutes later, I'm wrapping a cardigan around my shoulders and stepping out into the cool evening air. The library door creaks slightly as I open it. The book is just as I left it. I pull it out, running my fingers over the worn cover before opening to page 158 where I tucked my note. It's still there. Of course it is. Why wouldn't it be? I'm about to close the book when something makes me turn to the title page. There, in the same handwriting as the note, is an inscription I missed before. Property of M.B., please return if found. The remaining letters of the last name are smudged. The owner of the book can note a mystery.
Chapter 2. Micah. The last package of the day is a small brown box addressed to the Millers at the end of Oak Lane. I slide it carefully into their mailbox, then check my watch. 13 minutes ahead of schedule. Not my personal best, but respectable for a Thursday. I adjust my postal cap and roll my shoulders, easing the tension from carrying my bag. The late afternoon sun filters through the trees, casting dappled shadows across the sidewalk. Despite the lingering chill, the promise of spring hangs in the air. Green buds are appearing on branches and crocuses are pushing through the soil in perfectly maintained garden beds. My route through Juniper Falls has been the same for 9 years. I know every crack in the sidewalk, every house with dogs that bark at the sight of my uniform, every porch where elderly residents wait for their social security checks. The predictability suits me. Always has. I check the time again. The post office won't expect me back for at least 20 minutes. My steps slow as I approach Maple Street, where a certain robin's egg blue house sits beneath a massive oak tree. Just a quick look, I mutter to myself. Professional curiosity. The truth is both simpler and more complicated. I want to know if she found my note. Clara Langford's house appears around the corner, bathed in warm afternoon light. The wraparound porch with its swing and potted plants. The cheerful curtains in the windows. And at the edge of her yard, the little blue free library that matches her house. My heart speeds up as I approach it, an involuntary reaction I've given up trying to control. I open the small glass door, holding my breath. The copy of Persuasion is gone. The flutter in my chest is ridiculous for a man my age. I'm not some teenager passing notes in class. I'm a 46-year-old mail carrier who should know better than to leave anonymous messages for a woman who has barely spoken 10 words to me in 5 years. Yet here I am, reaching into my messenger bag for the second book I carefully selected this morning. A light catches my eye. There's movement in her front window. Clara passes by, a mug in her hand, her honey blonde hair loose around her shoulders instead of in its usual neat bun. She doesn't look outside, doesn't see me standing at her library like some love-struck fool. The image triggers a memory of Clara sitting in that same window 3 winters ago, wrapped in a blanket, reading by the soft glow of a lamp while snow fell silently outside. I'd been working overtime due to the holiday rush, my route stretching into the early evening darkness. I'd glimpsed her through the falling snow. A tableau of warmth and quiet contentment that had stayed with me for days afterward. I delivered her mail the next morning and found an envelope addressed to the holiday mail carrier containing a gift card to Novel Sips and a note thanking me for my dedication during the busy season. She hadn't specified me by name, hadn't singled me out in any way. But the small kindness had lodged itself in my heart like a seed falling on fertile ground. Since then, I've noticed 100 little things about Clara Langford. The way she always waves to Mrs. Miller across the street. How she leaves water bowls out for neighborhood pets. The careful attention she gives to maintaining her little library, rearranging the books by color each week. And I've noticed the sadness too. How she sits alone on her porch swing on summer evenings. How her smile never quite reaches her eyes when neighbors mention their husbands or wives. I pull myself back to the present, aware that I'm lingering too long. The book in my hands feels suddenly heavy. It's The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett. My mother read it to me when I was a boy, one of the few clear memories I have of her before she left. I found this copy at a used bookstore in Elk Ridge last weekend, something compelling me to buy it despite already owning a newer edition at home. Now I know why. I open the front cover and carefully tuck in the note I wrote this morning, my handwriting neater than usual from the effort of trying to make it look casual. Some things bloom again when you least expect them. Simple. Understated. Nothing that crosses any lines. I place the book in the center of her library, its warm green cover standing out among the other spines. As I close the glass door, my fingertips linger on the latch. This is madness, leaving pieces of myself in books for a woman who probably doesn't remember my name. Yet I can't help feeling that if anyone would understand the language of borrowed words and quiet gestures, it would be Clara Langford. I step back onto the sidewalk and continue my route, forcing myself not to look back at her window. The weight of what I've done, what I'm doing, settles on my shoulders. For years, I've been invisible to her, just the man who delivers the mail, another face in a small town. Maybe that's all I'll ever be. Hazel Elliott's home sits at the edge of Willow Lane, easily identifiable by the riot of potted plants that crowd her porch and spill into her front yard. In the 9 years I've delivered her mail, I've never once seen her garden look anything less than perfect, regardless of the season. Today is no exception. As I approach, she's carefully pinching leaves from a miniature herb garden, the scent of rosemary and mint drifting on the breeze. Her silver hair is pinned back in its usual neat bun, and she wears a cardigan despite the mild spring day. Right on schedule, Micah Brooks, she calls without looking up. Punctual as ever. I'd never figured out how she always knows it's me. I'm not the only postal worker in Juniper Falls, but somehow Hazel always knows when it's my footsteps coming up her walk. Afternoon, Ms. Elliott, I reply, sorting through my bag for her mail. Beautiful day. It certainly is. She straightens, wiping her hands on a small towel tucked into her pocket. And please, how many times must I ask you to call me Hazel? You're not in my third-grade class anymore. Force of habit. I hand her a small stack of envelopes. Nothing exciting today, I'm afraid. Just the electric bill and some catalogs. She takes the mail with a smile that crinkles the corners of her eyes. At my age, boring mail is good mail. No surprises needed. She shuffles through the envelopes, then looks up at me with that penetrating gaze that made her the most feared and beloved teacher at Juniper Falls Elementary. You have time for some tea? The mint is fresh picked. I check my watch. My last stop is the community center, and I'm ahead of schedule. I suppose I could spare a few minutes. Wonderful. She gestures to the porch swing. Have a seat. I'll only be a moment. I settle onto the swing, placing my bag beside me. The chains creak softly as I rock back and forth, a soothing rhythm that matches the quiet pace of the neighborhood. From Hazel's porch, I can see 3 blocks of my route, including, in the distance, the corner of Maple Street where Clara lives. Hazel returns with 2 steaming mugs, handing me one that smells of mint and honey. She eases herself into the wicker chair opposite me, studying me over the rim of her cup as she takes a sip. So, she says after a moment of comfortable silence, what have you been reading lately? It's our usual conversation starter. Hazel knows I read voraciously, a habit she encouraged when I was a quiet boy in her classroom, more comfortable with books than people. Just finished rereading The Secret Garden, I answer honestly. No need to mention that I purchased an extra copy explicitly to leave in Clara's library. Ah, one of my favorites. Her eyes sparkle. Renewal and second chances are such powerful themes. I nod, taking a careful sip of the hot tea. My mother used to read it to me when I was young. I remember. Hazel's gaze softens. You did a book report on it in my class. Very thoughtful for a 9-year-old. The fact that she remembers a book report from nearly 4 decades ago doesn't surprise me. Hazel Elliott forgets nothing, especially about her former students. Speaking of books, she continues, Clara Langford's little free library is doing nicely this spring, wouldn't you say? My mug freezes halfway to my lips. I take a deliberate sip before responding, striving for a neutral tone. Is it? I haven't particularly noticed. Hazel's laugh is like wind chimes. Oh, Micah. You notice everything on your route. It's what makes you such an excellent mail carrier. Heat creeps up my neck. I stare into my tea, unwilling to meet her knowing gaze. Clara seems happier lately, Hazel says casually. There's a lightness to her I haven't seen in years. She's even organizing a small poetry night at the library next Saturday evening. That's nice, I manage, my voice steady despite the sudden quickening of my pulse. Hazel nods, her eyes twinkling. She mentioned she might read something she wrote herself. Quite a step for someone who's kept her writing private since Thomas passed. I focus on the mint leaves floating in my tea, aware that Hazel is watching me closely. She writes poetry? Among other things. Hazel sets her mug down on the small table beside her chair. Clara has always had a way with words. Thomas encouraged it, but after he died. She shakes her head slightly. Well, some people just need a little nudge from the right story, or the right person, to find their voice again. The emphasis she places on her words makes me look up sharply. Her expression is innocent, but there's something in her eyes that makes me wonder just how much she knows. You should come to the poetry night, she says. 7 o'clock at the library. Small gathering, very informal. I don't think so. The words come out more abruptly than I intended. I'm not much for social events. No? She raises an eyebrow. Pity. I think Clara would appreciate the support. She's nervous about sharing her work. The image forms unbidden in my mind. Clara standing before a small audience, reading words she's written, perhaps words inspired by the notes I've left her. My chest tightens at the thought. I'm sure she'll have plenty of support without me, I say, finishing my tea and setting the mug on the porch railing. Thank you for the tea, Ms. Hazel. I should finish my route. She nods, making no move to stand. Of course. Duty calls. I pick up my bag and descend the porch steps, acutely aware of her eyes on my back. Micah, she calls when I reach the sidewalk. I turn, squinting against the afternoon sun. Sometimes the most important deliveries aren't the ones that come in the mail. Her smile is gentle but knowing. Something to consider. I nod once, unable to formulate a response that wouldn't reveal too much. As I continue down the street, her words echo in my mind, along with the tantalizing thought of hearing Clara read her poetry. Saturday at 7. I won't go, of course. That would cross a line. From anonymous notes to actual presence. From imagination to reality. Besides, what would I even say if she asked why I was there?
Chapter 3. Clara. The cardboard box of spring decorations sits on my coffee table as I sort through paper butterflies and flower garlands for my weekend project. Saturday mornings are perfect for these small rituals. Coffee, quiet, and tasks that don't require grading or lesson plans. I'm untangling a string of artificial flowers when movement outside the window catches my eye. A flash of blue by the free library. Someone stopping, then continuing down the sidewalk. Curious, I glance out to see the library door standing slightly ajar, a sliver of glass reflecting the morning sunlight. I set my coffee down and slip on the garden shoes I keep by the door. Whoever stopped by might have left something new, and there's no harm in checking. The morning air is cool as I make my way across the yard. Instead of Persuasion, a different book now sits in the center. It's a well-loved copy of The Secret Garden. With slightly trembling fingers, I lift it and open the cover. A small note slips out, the same masculine handwriting as before. Some things bloom again when you least expect them. Something warm unfurls in my chest. 9 words. Just 9 simple words, yet they feel like rain on soil I thought had gone fallow. Back inside, I examine the book more carefully. Like Persuasion, this copy appears to have been carefully selected. It's in good condition but with a certain well-loved quality to it. The pages have that distinct old book smell, and several passages are gently underlined in pencil, as if the reader wanted to remember them without damaging the text. I open to the first page and begin reading, transported back to the story of Mary Lennox and her discovery of a forgotten garden. One particular highlighted section catches my attention. If you look the right way, you can see that the whole world is a garden. Outside my window, the oak tree's new leaves flutter in the breeze. A garden. I can see it. The way life persists, blooms again, even after the harshest winters. Thomas loved wild gardens. While I've kept ours carefully tended over the years, the same neat rows of practical perennials and trimmed shrubs, I've never had his courage to plant the unexpected, to let things grow a little untamed. His section of the garden, once filled with surprise blooms and experimental plantings, is now my most orderly space. Maybe it's time to introduce a little wildness again. I walk to my desk and select a sheet of paper, reaching for my favorite pen. After several false starts, I settle on simplicity. The right story finds us when we need it most. Thank you for this one. See. I pause, tapping my pen against the paper. It feels incomplete. Inspiration strikes, and I add. Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul, Emily Dickinson. I fold the note carefully and slip it between pages 84 and 85, where Mary first discovers the key to the garden. Then I walk back outside and place the book in the little library, exactly where I found it. Back at my window, I watch a young couple stroll past with a toddler between them. 5 years ago, such a sight would have pierced me with grief for all that Thomas and I never had. Today, it simply exists. A beautiful moment separate from my own story. For the first time in a long time, I feel a sense of possibility. As if I'd been reading the same sad chapter for years and suddenly discovered there might be more pages yet to turn. Not moving on from Thomas, never that, but perhaps making room for something new alongside those precious memories. I glance at the box of spring decorations and feel a renewed sense of purpose. Today, I'll hang paper butterflies from my porch and plant something in the garden. Perhaps the wildflower seeds I bought on impulse last month. And then I'll work on that poem I've been thinking about for the library reading. Novel sips hums with conversation as I push through the door, the familiar scent of coffee and books wrapping around me like a welcome. Sunlight streams through the large front windows, highlighting dust motes that dance in the air and casting a golden glow across the worn wooden floors. Clara. Maggie Carter waves from behind the counter, her bright smile a fixture as permanent as the gleaming espresso machine she operates. Your usual? I nod, making my way toward her. Thanks, Maggie. And thanks again for helping spread the word about the poetry night at the library. We've got 12 people signed up so far, she says, steaming milk with practiced precision. Hazel's bringing her famous lemon squares, and I found those book-shaped paper napkins you mentioned. You're all being so supportive, I say, touched by the community's enthusiasm for my small event. Of course we are. It's the first thing you've organized since, she stops abruptly, her cheeks flushing. I mean, we're excited for you, that's all. Since Thomas died. The unspoken words hang between us, but they don't sting the way they once did. Well, thank you. I'm looking forward to it too. Your tea, Maggie says, sliding a steaming mug across the counter. Earl Grey with a splash of cream. And Hazel's claimed her usual table by the window. Sure enough, Hazel Elliott sits surrounded by her book club regulars. Sarah from the Copper Kettle, Lila from the Flower Shop, and Evelyn Porter from the Ice Cream Parlor. Their monthly gathering has been a fixture at Novel Sips for years, though I usually decline their standing invitation, preferring quiet afternoons with my marking. Today, however, I find myself drawn to their circle of laughter and easy conversation. Clara. Hazel spots me approaching and shifts to make room. What a lovely surprise. Join us, please. I settle into the empty chair, warming my hands around my mug. I thought I'd be sociable for a change. Well, we're delighted, Lila says, her smile genuine beneath her silver-streaked black hair. We were just discussing the spring planting for the community center beds. Rose says we should focus on pollinator-friendly natives, Sarah adds, but I still think we need some showy annuals for color. The conversation flows easily around me. I contribute occasionally but mostly enjoy the simple pleasure of being in the company of these women who've known me since I first moved to Juniper Falls with Thomas 18 years ago. They never push, never pry, but their steady presence has been an anchor through the stormy years after his death. The bell above the door chimes, and a tall figure enters carrying a mail bag. I recognize him vaguely. The town's mail carrier, a quiet man who keeps to himself. There's something familiar about the way he moves, purposeful but unhurried, as he approaches the counter and hands Maggie a small stack of mail. Thanks, Micah, she says, setting the envelopes aside. Want your usual to go? Please. His voice is deep but soft, barely carrying across the busy cafe. Micah. The initial prickles at my mind. Could it be? But surely that's a stretch. Half the men in town probably have names starting with M. Earth to Clara, Hazel's amused voice pulls me back. You're a million miles away. Sorry, I say, feeling heat rise to my cheeks. Just thinking about the poetry night. MMM. Hazel follows my gaze briefly but returns to her tea without comment. I hear we might get some rain next week, Lila says, shifting the conversation. Good for the new plantings. As they discuss the weather forecast, I can't help noticing the mail carrier waiting by the pickup counter, eyes trained on his phone. There's something about his quiet presence that draws my attention. That's Micah, Lila mentions casually when she catches me glancing his way. He's been our mail carrier for years now. I don't think we've ever actually spoken, I say, trying to sound casual despite my curiosity. He's quite the reader from what I hear, Hazel adds, stirring her tea. Always has a book when he takes his lunch at the park bench. The mail carrier, Micah, collects his coffee from Maggie and turns toward the door. As he passes our table, he gives a polite nod. Afternoon, ladies. Hello, Micah, Hazel responds warmly. Busy day? Always is, he says with a small smile. His eyes briefly meet mine, and there's a moment of quiet acknowledgement before he continues toward the door. He seems nice, I comment after he leaves, aiming for casual. One of the most reliable people in town, Sarah says. Never misses a day, rain or shine. The conversation shifts to other topics, Lila's stepdaughter's college applications, Sarah's new menu items at the Copper Kettle, but my thoughts occasionally drift back to Micah Brooks and that brief moment of eye contact. I should get going, I say eventually, gathering my bag. Essays to grade before Monday. Hazel walks me to the door. It was lovely to see you out and about, Clara. You seem different today. Lighter somehow. I think of the book waiting in my little free library, the note tucked inside. Enjoying the spring weather, I suppose. It suits you, she says simply. Outside, the afternoon sun warms my face as I walk home, my thoughts occasionally drifting to Micah Brooks, the quiet mail carrier with kind eyes. I wonder about his reading habits, what books might be his favorites. As I round the corner onto my street, I see something on my porch. It's a small package, perfectly centered on the welcome mat. And beside my little free library, a flash of blue disappears around the corner.
Chapter 4. Micah. My fingers hover over the little library door, hesitating. It's been 3 days since I left the secret garden, and each time I've passed Clara's house on my route, I've managed to resist checking if she's responded. I tell myself it's better not to know, that the possibility of rejection would be harder than continuing to imagine my notes disappearing into the void. But today my resolve crumbles. The early morning light bathes the little blue library in soft gold, making it look like something from a fairy tale. I glance toward Clara's house. The curtains are still drawn, no movement visible through the windows. Just a quick look, I mutter to myself, words that are becoming a dangerous habit. The hinges whisper as I open the glass door. My heart skips when I see the secret garden exactly where I left it, tucked between a dog-eared mystery and a shiny new bestseller. I carefully extract it, telling myself I'm only checking to see if she took it inside, read it, returned it unmarked. The book falls open naturally to page 84, as if it's been recently read at this spot. A small slip of cream-colored paper slides out, catching on my sleeve before floating to the ground. The paper is thick, textured. Expensive stationery, not just a torn scrap like my own notes. I pick it up, my pulse quickening. The right story finds us when we need it most. Thank you for this one. See. And below it, in slightly smaller script. Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul, Emily Dickinson. I read it once, twice, a third time. The words blur slightly as I stare at them, a strange tightness forming in my chest. She responded. More than that. She quoted poetry, something personal and meaningful. This is no longer just me leaving anonymous notes for a woman who probably tosses them away with a bemused smile. This is a conversation. I sit on the stone bench beneath the oak tree, still clutching her note, uncertain how to proceed. I should end this now. Return the book, walk away, stick to delivering her mail with professional detachment. What started as a simple, harmless gesture has the potential to become something complicated, something that could hurt us both. I'm not the kind of man women choose. I've learned that lesson the hard way. And Clara Langford deserves far better than a mail carrier with more books than friends. Yet I can't ignore the way my heart lifted at her words. Or the fact that she knows poetry well enough to quote Dickinson. Or how carefully she selected this particular quote about hope. A bird in the soul, persistent despite storms. Before I can talk myself out of it, I reach into my bag and pull out a small notebook. Not my official postal one for tracking packages, but the leather-bound journal I've carried for years. I flip to a blank page and write what feels true in this moment. Grief and hope often occupy the same garden. One doesn't erase the other, but perhaps they can grow together. I tuck the note back into the secret garden, this time placing it around page 152, where Mary and Colin talk about the magic that exists in ordinary things. Then I return the book to its exact place in the library, closing the door carefully. As I turn to leave, I find myself looking toward Clara's house again. A small movement catches my eye. A curtain falls back into place in the front window. My stomach drops. Was she watching? Does she know it's me? I hurry down the sidewalk, my mailbag suddenly feeling heavier against my hip. What am I doing? This is childish, leaving notes like a schoolboy with a crush. If she saw me, she must think I'm pathetic or, worse, creepy. Yet I can't erase the image of her words from my mind, the elegant script, the deliberate quote. She took time to respond thoughtfully. My route takes me in a circuit that returns to Maple Street in the afternoon. By then, Clara's house is empty, her car gone, at school, teaching literature to teenagers who probably don't appreciate the gift of her insights. I deliver her mail. Just a catalog and what looks like a personal letter. I place them carefully in her box. I should continue on. The Hendersons have a package that needs a signature, and I'm already running 5 minutes behind. Instead, I linger near her porch, looking at the little free library from this new angle. What would it be like to sit on that porch swing, discussing books with Clara Langford? To hear her thoughts on Dickinson or Austen or Burnett? To share the passages that have shaped my quiet life? Morning, Micah. I startle at Mrs. Patterson's voice as she walks her terrier past Clara's fence. Good morning, I manage, nodding politely. Beautiful day, isn't it? She continues, seemingly oblivious to my discomfort at being caught staring at Clara's house. Spring is finally deciding to stick around. Seems that way, I agree, adjusting my bag as if preparing to move on. Clara's tulips are coming in nicely, Mrs. Patterson observes, looking toward the neat flower beds. Always the first in the neighborhood to bloom. That woman has a gift with gardens, though she keeps everything so organized these days. Not like when Thomas was alive. He'd plant the wildest things wherever inspiration struck. I nod, uncertain what response she expects. The insight into Clara's habits feels both precious and intrusive, a glimpse into a life I have no right to examine. Mrs. Patterson continues down the sidewalk, but her casual mention of Thomas, Clara's late husband, lingers like a shadow. I'd never met the man, but people speak of him with genuine fondness. By all accounts, he was well loved, the kind of person who made an impression. The kind of person Clara Langford deserves. What am I doing, inserting myself into her life with anonymous notes? She's had real love, real loss. My childish gestures must seem trivial in comparison. I force myself to continue my route, but guilt and longing war inside me with each step. I should stop this before it becomes something neither of us can control. Before she discovers it's just me, the quiet mail carrier she barely notices, and feels disappointed or, worse, obligated to be kind about it. Yet even as I form this resolution, I find myself thinking of other books I could leave, other notes I might write. Because for the first time in years, someone has responded to my words with words of her own, creating a connection, however fragile. The wrench slips in my hand, catching my knuckle against Hazel's mailbox. I swallow a wince and reposition the tool. "You're sure I can't get you some lemonade?" Hazel calls from her porch, where she's been tending her potted herbs. "Almost done," I reply, tightening the final bolt. When Hazel flagged me down this morning about her terribly wobbly mailbox, I'd been skeptical. But the mounting bracket had indeed worked loose over time. "Good as new," I announce, wiping my hands on a rag. "Shouldn't give you any more trouble." "My hero," Hazel says with a smile. "I don't know what I would have done without you." "Called a handyman, probably." "Nonsense. Why pay someone when I have a perfectly capable former student?" She descends the porch steps. "Besides, I love our little chats." Before I can respond, movement down the sidewalk catches my attention. Clara Langford approaches, honey blonde hair gathered in a loose knot, a stack of books cradled in one arm. Hazel waves. "Clara!" Perfect timing. Clara looks up, surprise registering before she smiles. "Hazel, hello." Her eyes shift to me with recognition. "Oh! Good afternoon." "Clara, you remember Micah Brooks? He's saved my mailbox from certain disaster." "We met briefly at Novel Sips," Clara says, approaching us. "Hello again, Mr. Brooks." "Micah, please," I manage, suddenly aware of the smudge of dirt on my cheek. "Micah," she repeats. "And I'm Clara, since we're dispensing with formalities." Clara was coming to borrow my copy of the collected poems of Emily Dickinson, Hazel says, for the poetry night preparation. I think of the Dickinson quote in Clara's note, and heat rises up my neck. "Yes," Clara confirms, lifting her stack of books. "I'm putting together a display of poets for inspiration. I was hoping I could get your opinion on these, Hazel." "I've always liked Dickinson," I hear myself say. "Hope is the thing with feathers." Clara's eyes widen slightly. "You know her work?" I nod. "My mother used to recite that one. It stuck with me." "It's one of my favorites too," Clara says softly. She shifts her books, and I step forward. "Can I help you with those?" "That's very kind, but I'm just going back to my house." "Perfect," Hazel interjects. "Micah, why don't you walk Clara home while I find that Dickinson collection?" Before either of us can protest, Hazel disappears inside, leading us by the newly repaired mailbox. "You really don't have to," Clara says. "I'm sure you have mail to deliver." "Actually, I'm on my lunch break." Hazel's was my last stop. She hands me half her stack with a small smile. "In that case, I thank you." As we walk, I notice several books have sticky notes protruding from their pages. "Notes for the poetry night?" I ask. "They are," she sighs. "I haven't organized anything like this in a long time." "What's your theme?" She glances at me, seemingly surprised by the question. "Second chances," she says after a moment. "Renewal. Beginnings that come after endings." The echo of my own note makes my steps falter briefly. "That sounds meaningful," I manage. "I hope so. I've been finding myself drawn to those themes lately." We walk in companionable silence. It strikes me how comfortable it feels, despite my racing thoughts. I haven't been to many poetry readings, I admit as we near her street. "You should come," she says, then quickly adds, "if you're interested, that is." "I might," I reply, surprising myself. As we turn onto Maple Street, her little free library comes into view. I wonder if she's found my latest note yet. "Thank you for the help," she says at her gate, taking back her books. Our fingers brush briefly in the exchange. "My pleasure." "I suppose you deliver mail to half the town," she says, a question in her tone. "3/4, actually. Including your street." She seems about to say something more when Hazel calls from behind us, waving a small book. Found it! She reaches us slightly breathless. Tucked behind some Jane Austen. Thank you, Hazel, Clara says, accepting the book. No rush returning it, Hazel replies. Books should wander occasionally. It's good for them. The comment strikes me as oddly specific given my recent book exchanges with Clara. I should get back to the post office, I say, checking my watch. Thank you again, Micah, Clara says with a smile that creates small crinkles at the corners of her eyes. For the mailbox heroics and the book delivery. Anytime, I reply, meaning it more than I should.
Chapter 5. Clara. The secret garden sits open on my lap as I read the latest note for perhaps the 10th time since finding it yesterday morning. The handwriting has become familiar now, the careful penmanship that isn't too neat or too messy. Grief and hope often occupy the same garden. One doesn't erase the other, but perhaps they can grow together. My finger traces the words, feeling the slight indentation in the paper. I've analyzed every aspect of this message. The metaphor extending from the book's title, the gentle acknowledgement of loss, the suggestion of possibility without diminishing what came before. It's exactly what I needed to hear, though I hadn't known it until reading these words. And I'm almost certain Micah Brooks wrote them. The evidence has been accumulating. His initial, M. The timing of the book's appearance after he delivered my mail. His knowledge of Emily Dickinson. The way his eyes wouldn't quite meet mine when we spoke of poetry. Hazel's comment about books wandering. Even his handwriting on the postal slip he left last week bears similarities to these notes. Yet I hesitate to confront him directly. What if I'm wrong? What if this connection I've been feeling is entirely one-sided, a product of wishful thinking and literary romanticism? And if I'm right, what then? Do I want to bring this quiet exchange into the light, where it might wither under scrutiny? Or is it safer kept in the pages of shared books, a secret garden of possibilities? The morning light shifts across my chair as I contemplate these questions. Eventually, I set the book aside and prepare for work, tucking the note into my journal. Whatever I decide, I'm not ready to let it go just yet. The halls of Juniper Falls high buzz with pre-summer energy as I make my way to my classroom. Only 5 weeks remain in the school year, and both students and faculty vibrate with that peculiar mix of exhaustion and anticipation that defines May. Classroom doors display colorful exam review materials, senior lockers sport countdown calendars to graduation. Morning, Ms. Langford. Lily Matthews waves as she passes. Did you grade our essays yet? Almost finished, I assure her. You'll have them tomorrow. My first period AP Literature class is already seated when I arrive, an unusual display of punctuality that immediately raises my suspicions. Good morning, I say, setting my bag on the desk. You're all remarkably on time today. James Edmonds, class president and perpetual overachiever, straightens in his seat. We wanted to ask you something, Ms. Langford. All of you? I raise an eyebrow, surveying the suddenly attentive faces. This sounds serious. It's about the spring assembly, Lily explains. We're focusing on stories that shape us this year. Principal Donovan asked if we'd find a faculty speaker, adds Aiden from the back row. Someone who could talk about why literature matters. We voted, James continues, and we'd like it to be you. I blink, genuinely surprised. Me? I'm sure there are more dynamic speakers on staff. Mr. Rivera from debate, perhaps? But this is about stories, Bethany objects. You're always telling us how literature isn't just something to study. It's how we understand ourselves and each other. You make books feel important, Lily adds quietly. Like they're not just assignments but lifelines. A chorus of agreement ripples through the classroom, leaving me momentarily speechless. These teenagers, whom I sometimes worry only tolerate literature for the credits, have been listening after all. I'm honored, I say finally. But what exactly would you want me to talk about? Why stories matter, James says, as if it's obvious. Maybe using an example from your own life? My mind immediately flashes to the notes in my little free library. A story unfolding in real time, page by page, note by note. My own life isn't particularly dramatic, I demur. Everyone has stories that shaped them, Lily says with the conviction of youth. Even teachers. The bell rings, saving me from an immediate response. Let me think about it, I tell them, turning to the whiteboard. For now, let's discuss the symbolism in Chapter 7. As I guide them through the day's lesson, part of my mind keeps returning to their request. Speaking about why stories matter would be easy enough. I'd built my career on that conviction. But using my own story as an example? That feels dangerously vulnerable. What would I say? That after Thomas died, I found solace in the fictional worlds where endings weren't always final? That recently, mysterious notes from a secret admirer have awakened something I thought long dormant? That I'm starting to believe in second chapters against my better judgment? By the time my prep period arrives, I've nearly talked myself out of accepting. I sit at my desk, staring at the stack of essays waiting to be graded, when my gaze falls on the journal where I've tucked the latest note from Micah, if my suspicions are correct. Grief and hope occupying the same garden. Perhaps that's exactly the kind of story worth sharing. Not the details, not the private exchange of notes, but the fundamental truth that stories, whether in classic novels or handwritten notes, help us navigate the most confusing territories of human experience. They remind us we're not alone in our feelings, that others have walked similar paths and found their way through. I pull out a fresh sheet of paper and begin drafting some thoughts for the assembly speech. I'm not ready to approach Micah about the notes, not yet. But maybe I am ready to acknowledge, at least to myself, how much they've come to mean to me. The Juniper Falls Library feels different in the evening light, transformed from its daytime quiet into something warmer, more intimate. 15 chairs form a semicircle near the poetry collection, and small battery-powered candles flicker on the windowsills. Hazel's lemon squares and tea service occupy a table by the entrance, filling the space with the scent of citrus and chamomile. Clara, this is lovely, Lila says, settling into her chair with a well-worn volume of Pablo Neruda. You've created something special here. Thank you. I adjust my notes one last time, my hands slightly trembling. The poem I've written, about new seasons, unexpected growth, feels suddenly too personal, too revealing. People continue to arrive. Rose with a collection of nature poetry. Sarah from the Copper Kettle with some humorous verses about small-town life. Even Principal Donovan clutching a Robert Frost anthology. 15 people total, exactly as planned. Hazel appears at my elbow. Nervous, dear? A bit, I admit, glancing at the empty chair in the back row. I wondered if. I trail off, not wanting to voice my disappointment. Patience, Hazel says with a knowing smile. Sometimes the most important arrivals come when we least expect them. As if summoned by her words, the library door opens with a soft chime. Micah steps inside, looking uncertain and slightly out of place in jeans and a navy button-down shirt. His eyes scan the room until they find mine. Sorry I'm late, he says quietly to Hazel, who beams at him. Not late at all, she replies. Perfect timing, I'd say. He takes the empty chair in the back, our eyes meeting across the small gathering. Something warm unfurls in my chest. He came. Despite his claim that he didn't attend many poetry readings, he came to hear me share something I'd written. Shall we begin? I ask, finding my voice steadier than expected. Welcome to our first poetry and prose evening. Tonight we celebrate the power of words to connect us across time and distance, to remind us of our shared humanity. The readings flow beautifully. Lila shares a Neruda poem about love in autumn years. Rose reads Mary Oliver on the resilience of wildflowers. Each voice adds to the tapestry of the evening, creating something larger than the sum of its parts. When my turn arrives, I stand on unsteady legs, my handwritten poem clutched in my hands. This is something I wrote recently, I begin, my voice barely above a whisper. About learning to plant new seeds in old gardens. I read slowly, each line a small confession. The earth remembers every root. Every bloom that came before. But spring arrives with patient hands, offering chances to grow more. Not to replace what once was green, but to expand the sacred ground, where memory and hope can meet, where lost and found are finally found. As I finish, the silence feels sacred rather than empty. When the gentle applause begins, I catch Micah's eye. He's leaning forward slightly, his expression intent and moved. After the formal reading ends, people mingle over tea and Hazel's lemon squares. I accept congratulations and compliments, but part of my attention remains fixed on Micah, who hovers near the back, clearly wanting to approach but hesitating. Finally, as others begin to leave, he makes his way over. "That was beautiful," he says simply. "Your poem spoke to something I've been thinking about lately." "About new growth?" I ask. "About second chances," he replies. "About whether it's ever too late to plant something new." The double meaning in his words isn't lost on me. "I don't think it's ever too late," I say softly. "As long as we're brave enough to tend what we plant." He nods, something shifting in his expression. "Would you like me to walk you home? It's getting dark." "I'd like that very much." We help clean up, then step out into the cool evening air. The walk to my house takes us through quiet streets lit by porch lights and stars. "You were right to be nervous," Micah says as we turn onto my street. "Reading your own work, that takes courage." "Everything worthwhile does," I reply, thinking of more than just poetry. We reach my gate far too soon. In the soft light from my porch, Micah's features are gentle, thoughtful. "Thank you for coming tonight," I say. "It meant a lot to see you there." "Thank you for inviting anyone who wanted to hear stories about hope," he says. Some of us needed the reminder. There's a moment, a pause where the evening air seems to hold its breath. His eyes meet mine with an intensity that makes my pulse quicken. For a heartbeat, I think he might say something more, might bridge the gap between the careful politeness we've maintained. Instead, he takes a small step back. "Good night, Clara." "Good night, Micah." I watch him walk away until the shadows swallow his figure, then make my way inside. Later, as I sit at my desk with my best stationery, the words come easily. "I don't know who you are, but your notes have become treasures I look forward to finding." They've reminded me that endings can become beginnings when we least expect it. Tonight I read about new growth to a room full of friends, and realized how much I want to know the person who first planted that seed of hope. I'm grateful, but I wish I knew who to thank in person. See. I carry the note out to my little free library, where the secret garden waits patiently in the moonlight. As I tuck the note between its pages, I find myself hoping that my mysterious correspondent was in the audience tonight, that he heard not just my poem but the invitation hidden in its lines. The stars above seem brighter as I return to my house, as if the universe itself is holding space for new stories to unfold.
Chapter 6. Micah. Her note burns in my pocket as I walk my evening route, the words already committed to memory. I wish I knew who to thank in person. I've read it a dozen times since finding it this morning, each reading leaving me more conflicted than the last. She wants to know who I am. But does she want it to be me? The thought follows me all day, through mail deliveries and package drop-offs, through polite exchanges and the mechanical motions of my job. By the time I reach Willow Lane, my thoughts are so tangled I barely notice where I am until Hazel's voice breaks through. "You look like a man with the weight of the world on his shoulders." I blink, focusing on her figure in the garden. She's kneeling beside a row of new plantings, trowel in hand, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across her yard. "Just tired," I say, handing her a small stack of mail. "Long day." Hazel studies me with those perceptive eyes that missed nothing when I was 9 and miss even less now. Would that tiredness have anything to do with a certain English teacher and her little free library? My pulse jumps. "I don't know what you mean." "Of course you don't." She sets her trowel aside and stands, brushing soil from her gardening gloves. "Just like you don't know anything about books appearing with thoughtful notes tucked inside their pages." I stare at her, heat rising up my neck. "How did you?" "Micah Brooks," I've known you since you were hiding novels behind your math textbook in 3rd grade. You think I wouldn't recognize your handwriting after all these years of Christmas cards? I close my eyes briefly. Does Clara know? That remains to be seen, Hazel says. Though I believe she has her theories. She's quite observant, our Clara. I never meant for it to go this far. The confession tumbles out before I can stop it. It was supposed to be a one-time thing. A book, a note. Something to make her day a little brighter. And instead? I can't stop thinking about her. The truth of it settles over me, both terrifying and exhilarating. About her responses, her thoughts on poetry, the way she looked after the poetry reading yesterday when I walked her home. Ah, Hazel says with a small smile. So that's why Mrs. Henderson was practically bursting to tell me she'd seen you two together. I grimace. Small towns. Indeed. She gestures to her porch steps. Sit with me a moment. I glance at my watch. I'm ahead of schedule, as usual. Just for a minute. The wooden steps creak under our weight as we settle side by side. Hazel removes her gloves, revealing hands that bear the marks of decades of gardening and life. She found another note, I admit, pulling the folded paper from my pocket. And wrote back. Hazel doesn't reach for it, respecting the privacy of our correspondence even as she acknowledges her awareness of it. And? She wants to know who's writing to her. That seems reasonable. I run a hand through my hair. What if she's disappointed? What if she's expecting someone more? More than what? A thoughtful man who notices details, appreciates literature, and has been quietly caring about her well-being for years? Hazel shakes her head. Give Clara more credit than that. It's not about giving her credit. It's about being realistic. I'm just a mail carrier? Hazel raises an eyebrow. Clara's not the type to judge someone by their occupation, Micah. It's not just that. I wasn't honest with her. I left anonymous notes instead of talking to her like a normal person would. Perhaps, Hazel concedes. But sometimes the truest things are hardest to say face to face. Your notes gave her something she needed. A connection without pressure, hope without expectation. She pats my hand gently. The wisdom of her words settles over me. So you think I should tell her? I think, Hazel says carefully, that leaving notes in books is a beginning, not an ending. The question is whether you're brave enough to start the next chapter. I stare down at Clara's note, at her elegant handwriting expressing gratitude and curiosity. The thought of revealing myself makes my palms sweat with a nervousness I haven't felt since childhood. But the alternative suddenly seems impossible. I don't know what to say to her, I admit. Perhaps the truth, Hazel suggests. That you've admired her from afar. That you found a way to connect through books because words on paper felt safer than words spoken aloud. That sounds pathetic. That sounds human, she corrects gently. We're all a little afraid of rejection. I stand, tucking Clara's note back into my pocket. Thank you, Hazel. For not thinking I'm ridiculous. Oh, I think you're a little ridiculous, she says with a twinkle in her eye. But in the most endearing way possible. She rises too, retrieving her trowel. I finish my route on autopilot, her words echoing in my mind. When I return to my apartment above the old hardware store, I don't even bother changing out of my uniform before sitting at my desk with a blank piece of paper. Draft after draft joins the growing pile in my wastebasket. Too formal. Too casual. Too revealing. Not revealing enough. The right words elude me, even as the need to find them grows more urgent. Finally, as the evening shadows lengthen across my floor, I write a single line. What if the person you're looking for is already standing at your door? I stare at the words, simple and direct. No poetry, no literary references. Just a question that feels like stepping off a cliff without knowing what waits below. Before I can second-guess myself, I fold the note carefully and reach for my jacket. The spring evening is mild, with just enough chill to justify my hurried pace toward Maple Street. I tell myself I'm just going for a walk, that I might not even leave the note, that I could think about it for another day or two. But as Clara's house appears around the corner, its free library standing sentinel beneath the oak tree, I know I'm done hiding. Whatever happens next, rejection, awkwardness, or something I'm afraid to hope for, at least there will be honesty between us. I slip the note into the secret garden, exactly where she left her last message. Mail delivery is usually a straightforward process. Sort the letters and packages by address, follow the route, place items in mailboxes, repeat. Today, each step feels like wading through deep water, time stretching and compressing as I make my way through the familiar streets of Juniper Falls. Did she find my note? Will she be home? By the time I turn onto Maple Street, my collar feels too tight despite the mild spring day. I've arranged my route to deliver to Clara's house last. It's either a strategic decision or cowardice, I'm not entirely sure which. My steps slow as her little blue house comes into view. And there she is, sitting on her porch swing, a book open in her lap. Not just any book. She's holding The Secret Garden. My pulse quickens as I approach her gate, the small bundle of mail in my hand suddenly feeling like an insufficient reason for being here. She looks up, her honey blonde hair loose around her shoulders, and our eyes meet. Neither of us speaks as I make my way up the path to her porch steps. Good afternoon, I finally manage, my voice steadier than I feel. Hello, Micah. She closes the book, keeping one finger between the pages as a marker. Between those pages, I can see the edge of a familiar slip of paper. My note. I hand her the mail. Light day. Thank you. She takes it, setting it aside without looking at it. Then she tilts her head slightly, studying me with those perceptive hazel eyes. I received an interesting note recently. My mouth goes dry. Did you? She nods, opening the book to where her finger has kept the place. She removes my note, the words visible even from where I stand. What if the person you're looking for is already standing at your door? It made me wonder, she says softly. About? About who might be standing at my door. And what they might be afraid to say. The moment stretches between us, fragile and charged with possibility. She knows. I can see it in her eyes, in the gentle expectation of her expression. May I? I gesture to the space beside her on the swing. She moves over in silent invitation. I sit, the swing swaying gently beneath our combined weight. The scent of her, something floral mixed with paper and ink, makes it hard to focus. I've been leading the notes, I say finally, the admission both terrifying and freeing. Since the beginning. Since persuasion. She nods, as if confirming something she already knew. Why anonymously? Because I didn't think you'd notice me otherwise. I look down at my hands. I'm just the mail carrier. You're you. Just the mail carrier, she repeats thoughtfully. The man who knows everyone's address, who delivers everything from bills to love letters, who walks these streets in all weather. She shakes her head gently. There's no just about that, Micah. Her words ease something tight in my chest. I should have signed my name. It wasn't fair to create a mystery. I'm a literature teacher, she says with a small smile. I appreciate a good mystery. Her expression softens, voice growing quieter. Your notes came at a time when I needed them. When I needed to be reminded that stories can have unexpected chapters. I never meant to intrude or presume. You didn't. She turns slightly toward me, her expression earnest. You offered something genuine. Something thoughtful. The books you chose, the quotes you selected. They weren't random. They were meant for me. They were, I admit quietly. The swing rocks gently as a breeze stirs the leaves above us. In the distance, a lawnmower hums, the sound of ordinary life continuing all around our extraordinary moment. I have a confession too, Clara says after a moment. I suspected it might be you. After I learned your name, after we spoke about Emily Dickinson, little things started connecting. Is that why you were waiting for me today? Partly. She looks down at the note in her hand. Mostly I wanted to meet the person who sees gardens where others might see only weeds. Who understands that grief and hope can coexist. Her words, echoing my own note, send warmth through me. I've always noticed you, I find myself saying. Long before the notes. Your kindness to students, your careful tending of this library, the way you read by your window on winter mornings. I trail off, suddenly aware how this might sound. That probably seems intrusive. It seems observant, she corrects gently. The way you notice details, find meaning in small things. That's a gift, Micah. The way she says my name makes it sound like something precious. We sit in silence for a moment, the swing creaking softly, neither rushing to fill the space between us. What happens now? I finally ask. She considers this, turning my note over in her hands. Now, I think we start a new chapter. One where we talk in person, not just through books. I'd like that. So would I. Her smile reaches her eyes, creating those small crinkles I've come to adore. As the swing sways, our hands rest side by side on the weathered wood between us, not quite touching. Slowly, deliberately, I move my smallest finger until it rests against hers. It's the barest point of contact, a comma, not an exclamation point, but it's real and immediate in a way our written exchanges never could be. After a moment, she turns her hand over, palm up in quiet invitation. I place my hand in hers, our fingers interlacing with careful intent. Her skin is warm against mine, and in that simple touch is a universe of possibility. I'm speaking at the spring assembly tomorrow, she says softly. About why stories matter. Would you come? I'll be there, I promise.
Chapter 7. Clara. The dress Thomas bought me for our last anniversary hangs in my closet, unworn for 5 years. A simple blue sundress with tiny white flowers along the hem. For summer days and memories to come, he'd said. We never got those summer days. He was gone by March. I slip it on. The woman in the mirror looks like a stranger. Like someone lighter, more hopeful than I've allowed myself to be. Someone who held hands with a mail carrier on her porch swing yesterday and felt the world shift beneath her. The thought sends a wave of panic through me. This is happening too fast. Yesterday with Micah awakened something I've kept carefully dormant. Something that terrifies me with its intensity. What if I lose again? I change out of the dress, hanging it back in the closet where it belongs, with memories, not possibilities. Then I pull on comfortable jeans and a familiar cardigan, armor against vulnerability. My phone shows 2 text messages from Micah. Thank you for today. For listening, for understanding. Looking forward to hearing your speech this afternoon. Would you like me to meet you at the school? I type and delete 3 different responses before settling on. I need to finish preparing my speech. Rain check? The lie sits uncomfortably, but I send it anyway. I can't think about Micah right now. I need to focus on the assembly speech, on my students, on the professional obligations that have been my anchor. By the time I arrive at school, I've constructed a wall of rationality around my feelings. I hardly know Micah, not really. A few notes, one meaningful conversation. It's hardly a foundation for genuine connection. I'm romanticizing him because of the notes, because of the literary magic of anonymous correspondence. The assembly hall buzzes with energy as I take my seat near the stage. James Edmonds, the student body president who will introduce me, approaches with a clipboard. Everything's set, Ms. Langford, he says. We've adjusted the microphone height like you asked. Thank you, James, I reply, smoothing my note cards. I appreciate all the student council's work on this assembly. We're really glad you agreed to speak, he says with earnest enthusiasm. My whole AP class has been talking about it. The assembly proceeds smoothly. When James introduces me with generous praise, I make my way to the microphone. As I take my place, I scan the audience out of habit. And there, standing quietly at the back of the hall, is Micah. Our eyes meet briefly before I look away. He came. The realization warms me and terrifies me in equal measure. Stories matter, I begin once I've found my voice, because they remind us we're not alone in our experiences. Whatever we're feeling, joy, grief, confusion, hope, someone has felt it before us and found words to describe it. As I speak about how literature provides both escape and homecoming, I realize my own hypocrisy. I've been telling myself a story about safety, about protecting what remains of my heart by keeping it walled away. After the assembly, I slip out a side door to avoid the crowd. And to avoid Micah. Running away? Hazel's voice stops me in the parking lot. I have papers to grade, I say, not meeting her eyes. Of course you do. Just as you had speech preparation this morning when Micah messaged you. Her gaze is gentle but unyielding. He's worried he overstepped yesterday. Guilt washes over me. He didn't. It's not about him. Then what is it about, Clara? I'm not ready, I say, the words coming out more sharply than intended. Everyone seems to think I should be moving on, finding someone new, but it's not that simple. What story are you telling yourself about Micah? About what might happen if you let yourself care for him? The question cuts through my defenses. That I'll lose again, I whisper. That I couldn't survive that a second time. That's a powerful story indeed. But is it the only possible one? She takes my hand between both of hers. Thomas wouldn't want his memory to be the reason you stop living, Clara. Tears spring to my eyes. I'm scared, Hazel. Of course you are, dear. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's moving forward despite it. What if I'm mistaking gratitude for his notes as something deeper? Then you take it slowly. You be honest with him. She pats my hand. Micah Brooks isn't going anywhere. He's delivered mail to this town for years without missing a day. That man understands patience and commitment. I manage a watery smile. I've made a mess of things, haven't I? Nothing that can't be unmade with honesty, Hazel assures me. Start by telling him what you're really afraid of. He deserves that much. Our conversation replays in my mind as I pull into the driveway. The late afternoon sun casts long shadows across my front yard, highlighting the little free library beneath the oak tree. Something about it looks different. I approach slowly, my bag still slung over my shoulder. When I open the glass door, I understand what's wrong. The books I've exchanged with Micah, Persuasion, The Secret Garden, have disappeared. The library isn't completely empty. Other novels and children's books still line the shelves, but the ones that mattered most to me are absent. For the first time since this began, there's no note waiting. No thoughtful message to carry me through the day. I close the door carefully, a hollow feeling expanding in my chest. This is what I wanted, isn't it? Space. Distance. A return to the safe, predictable life I'd constructed. But standing here, feeling the acute absence of those books, of him, I finally recognize the truth I've been avoiding. I've fallen for Micah Brooks. Not because of anonymous notes or literary gestures, but for the man himself. The quiet mail carrier who sees poetry in ordinary things. Who touched my hand with such care on my porch swing. Who came to hear me speak despite my dismissal. The realization doesn't come like a lightning strike but rather like dawn breaking, gradual, inevitable, illuminating. And with it comes the sickening understanding that I may have pushed away exactly what I need most.
Chapter 8. Micah. 3 days of silence feel like an eternity. 3 days since I collected the books from Clara's library, since I saw the flash of confusion on her face at the assembly when she spotted me in the back row. 3 days of delivering mail to her house without catching even a glimpse of her. The books sit in a neat stack on my kitchen table, physical reminders of a conversation that appears to have ended mid-sentence. I should move on. Respect her silence. She's made her choice clear enough. Instead, I find myself turning onto Willow Lane, parking in front of Hazel's cottage. The morning garden welcomes me with its riot of spring colors, but I barely notice as I make my way to her door. She answers before I can knock. I was wondering when you'd come, she says, stepping aside to let me in. Tea's already brewing. The familiar scent of her kitchen, mint, honey, old books, wraps around me as I take a seat at the worn table. Hazel pours 2 cups of tea in silence, her movements unhurried. I don't know why I'm here, I admit finally. Don't you? She sets a cup before me and sits opposite, her eyes kind but searching. She doesn't want this, I say quietly. Whatever I thought might be happening between us. Hazel sips her tea thoughtfully. Fear and rejection aren't the same thing, Micah. It feels the same. Perhaps to the recipient. She places her cup down carefully. But their roots are quite different, and so are their remedies. I stare into my tea, unwilling to hope. What do you suggest I do? Instead of answering directly, Hazel rises and moves to her bookshelf. After a moment's consideration, she selects a slim volume bound in faded blue cloth. When she returns to the table, she slides it toward me. Poetry? I ask, noting there's no title on the cover. A journal, actually. Empty. She opens it to reveal a blank page, then tucks a single sheet of cream stationery inside. The stationery is also blank. I look up at her, confused. Your notes gave Clara something precious, Hazel says gently. A reminder that her story isn't finished. That new chapters await. She taps the blank paper. But perhaps it's time she writes the ending. You mean? I mean that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is create space for someone else's words. She closes the journal. And then wait, with patience and hope, to hear them. The simplicity of her suggestion strikes me with unexpected force. Not more words from me, not grand gestures, but silence. Do you think she'll write back? I can't keep the vulnerability from my voice. Hazel's smile is gentle. That's her choice to make. But Clara Langford has never been able to resist a blank page for long. The evening air grows cooler as shadows lengthen across Clara's yard. I've been sitting on this bench for nearly 2 hours, watching the sun slowly disappear behind the trees, wondering if my silent vigil is an act of hope or foolishness. As twilight deepens into dusk, a car approaches. My pulse quickens at the familiar sound of Clara's sedan pulling into the driveway. She emerges looking tired, a stack of papers clutched under one arm. For a moment, I consider slipping away, sparing us both the awkwardness of confrontation. But then her gaze shifts toward the library. She's noticed something different. I remain still as she crosses the yard. The last light of day catches in her honey blonde hair as she opens the glass door and discovers the journal. She lifts it from the shelf, weighing it in her hands before opening it. I watch her fingers trace the empty page, then find the blank note I tucked inside. Her brow furrows slightly, then relaxes as understanding dawns on her face. I thought maybe it was time for you to write the ending. My voice sounds rougher than intended. She turns, startled, finally seeing me in the shadows of the oak tree. You waited, she says, the journal still open in her hands. I nod, trying to keep my expression neutral despite the hope hammering in my chest. I'm good at waiting. She takes a step toward me, then another. In the deepening blue of evening, her eyes search mine. I'm sorry I pulled away. I got scared. Of what? I managed to ask, though I think I already know. Of feeling too much. She looks down at the blank page, then back to me. Of losing again. I can't promise you won't, I say quietly, honesty seeming more important than comfort. No one can promise that. I know. Another step closer. I don't need promises or perfection, Micah. I just need something real. I stand, narrowing the distance between us. What do you want, Clara? Her answer comes without hesitation. I want to write a new story. Her fingers tighten around the journal. And I want to write it with you. For a moment, I can't move, can't breathe. Then, slowly, I reach for her hand, giving her every chance to pull away. Her skin is cool against mine, but her grip is certain. Are you sure? The question barely rises above a whisper. Her answer isn't words but movement. She takes a step forward that eliminates the last space between us. The journal presses against my chest as she reaches up to touch my face, her palm warm against my cheek. The gentle pressure of her fingers in my beard sends a current through me unlike anything I've known. When our lips meet, sensation overwhelms thought. Her mouth is soft, tasting faintly of coffee and something sweeter. I cradle her face in my hands, feeling the delicate structure beneath my fingers, the silky texture of her skin. A small sound escapes her, something between a sigh and surrender, that vibrates against my lips and travels straight to my core. The scent of her surrounds me. It mingles with the evening air, with honeysuckle and freshly cut grass, creating a moment I know I'll remember with perfect clarity years from now. When we part, the first fireflies of the season have begun to rise from the grass around us, their gentle lights pulsing like earthbound stars. One drifts between us, illuminating the wonder in Clara's eyes. "This is a good beginning," I murmur, resting my forehead against hers. She smiles and opens the journal still clasped in her hand. The blank page waits, full of possibility. The best stories, she tells me, are written together. And as the fireflies dance around our little library, I kiss her again, this time with the certainty of someone who's finally found his way home.
Epilogue. Clara. Juniper Falls, 1 year later. By the power vested in me by the state of North Carolina and the internet, Hazel announces with barely contained delight, "I now pronounce you husband and wife." She leans forward with a conspiratorial wink. "Micah, you may kiss your bride." Sunlight filters through the maple leaves, casting dappled patterns across the small gathering in my backyard garden. Micah's hands, steady and warm, hold mine like they're something precious, something he never intends to release. "Hello, wife," he whispers before leaning in, his lips finding mine with the same reverence as that first kiss beneath the oak tree a year ago. Our guests, just 20 of our closest friends, break into applause. I feel rather than see them, too lost in the moment to look away from my husband's eyes. Husband. The word still feels new, unexpected. Like a plot twist in a story I thought I knew the ending to. When we turn to face our friends, I catch sight of Thomas's parents in the front row. His mother dabs at her eyes with a handkerchief, but her smile is genuine. Their blessing was an unexpected gift that helped quiet the last whispers of guilt. "I believe," Hazel says, raising her voice over the celebration, "that Novel Sips has prepared quite the spread for us under the tent. Andrew and Maggie have outdone themselves with an array of pastries, cakes, and coffee urns arranged on tables decorated with wildflowers from Rose's garden." Our guests begin to drift toward the refreshments, congratulations flowing around us like the gentle stream that runs along the edge of the property. "So," Micah says softly, his arms secure around my waist, "how does it feel to be Mrs. Brooks?" "Ms. Langford Brooks," I correct him with a smile. "My students would be very confused if I changed completely." "Fair enough." He presses a kiss to my temple. But the question stands. I take a moment to consider, to truly feel the weight and lightness of this day. It feels like coming home to a place I didn't know existed. His smile, that rare, full smile that transforms his face, is all the response I need. We join our friends beneath the tent, accepting well wishes and sharing laughter. Hazel holds court near the cake, regaling Lila and Graham with stories of matchmaking successes past. "You two were one of my finest achievements," she tells us as we approach. "We did most of the work," Micah protests good-naturedly. "Of course you did, dear." She pats his arm. "After I arranged for your paths to cross at exactly the right moments." A tall woman with Micah's eyes approaches, his cousin Jane, who traveled from Seattle for the ceremony. "Beautiful wedding," she says, clasping Micah's hand. "And this town of yours is charming. I was thinking of doing some hiking while I'm here. Anything scenic you'd recommend?" "Waterfall Loop is nice," Micah begins, but Hazel interjects. "You should see Lookout Point while you're here. There's a guide, Hunter Roads. If you can catch him on a good day, he knows those mountains better than anyone." Rose, arranging wildflowers in a vase nearby, adds gently, "if you can catch him at all. He's mostly a ghost these days." A subtle shift occurs in Hazel's expression. He used to be part of everything around here, she says, her voice softening. Tragedy does that sometimes. Makes people forget they still belong. The moment stretches, filled with something unspoken. Then Jane clears his throat. Well, I'll look into it. Thank you. As she moves away, Micah squeezes my hand and smiles down at me. Good thing some people remember how to bring us back. I rest my head against his shoulder, feeling the solid warmth of him. Around us, our friends celebrate, the garden blooms with late spring flowers, and somewhere beyond our little gathering, the mountains of Juniper Falls stand sentinel against the horizon. The breeze carries the scent of wildflowers and possibility. In my mind, I see the blank journal that started this chapter of our story, now filled with a year's worth of moments, big and small. And I know there are still so many empty pages waiting for us. So many stories yet to write. The end. This has been kindly penned. Written by Susanne Ash. Copyright 2025 by Susanne Ash. Production copyright 2025 by Susanne Ash. Thanks for listening. Please like and subscribe if you want me to put more of my books on YouTube. Visit my website at www.susanneash.com for more of my books or find me on Amazon.